Hello and welcome to POLYNT Composites' series of how-to videos. POLYNT Composites is dedicated to customer education to help you get the most out of our excellent products. Educational resources available from POLYNT Composites include this series of how-to instructional videos and the most invaluable piece of literature for the composites industry, the POLYNT Composites Application Guide. The POLYNT Composites Application Guide, an indispensable resource on composite technology, is available upon request from your usual POLYNT Composites business contact or online at polynt.com. In this video, we'll show you how to repair some common gel coat defects to produce cosmetically appealing FRP composites. The steps for repairing gel coat defects requiring gel coat application are: Step 1. Determine the cause of the defect, also determine the type and extent of the repair needed. Evaluate the environment and adjust as needed. Step 3. Gather the materials and set up the equipment. Step 4. Prepare the defective area. Step 5. Mix and measure the materials. Step 6. Apply the catalysed mixture. Step 7. Finish, sand, buff and wax. Now let's look at this process in more detail. Step 1. Determine the cause of the defect. Also determine the type of the defect and the type and extent of the damage. Common gel coat defects include scratches, chips, blisters, cracks and fibre print through. Understanding the cause of the defect may help you prevent it. If you suspect that the defect is caused by the mould, inspect the mould and consider repairing it. It may be more economical to repair the mould than constantly repairing parts. To determine if a repair is needed, stand a reasonable distance away from the part. For example, 3 feet is reasonable for a boat. If you can't see the defect, repair may not be needed. Consider washing minor issues such as stains and discolorations with soap and water. If the defect is still visible, repair is still needed. However, repair may only require light sanding and buffing without respraying gel coat. Is it repairable? What's the extent of the repair needed? A spot patch? A spray patch? A putty patch? Or a gel coat and laminate patch? If the defect is fibre print, surface distortion or weathering, sanding and buffing is the best remedy. We will demonstrate spot and spray patching in this video. The patching section of the applications guide describes the other types of repair. Step 2. Evaluate the environment and adjust as needed. The area should be well lit, but not in direct sunlight, which would elevate temperatures. The ideal temperature of the work area and part to be repaired and material is 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Temperatures below 20 degrees Celsius increase the cure time of the gel coat and can result in undercure and quality issues. POLYNT does not recommend temperatures below 20 degrees Celsius. Elevated temperatures speed up cure and reduce working time. Adjust the lighting and temperatures as needed to allow for the most ideal working environment possible. Always wear the appropriate PPE for the task, including protective clothing, safety glasses, gloves and respiratory protection as needed. Step 3. Gather the materials and set up the equipment. When possible, use gel coat from the same batch originally used to spray the part. Using a different batch for patching can result in off-colour patches. The batch number is shown on the label. Ensure that the gel coat in the container has been mixed properly before removing any for patching. Gather and set up the equipment and tools. Inspect all the equipment before use to ensure operator safety as well as part quality. If anything is missing or broken, repair or replace it before proceeding. Step 4. Prepare the defective area. First, let's look at spray patching. Mask off the area around the defect with tape. Sand and/or grind out the defect using 220 or 320 grit sandpaper or a dual action sander. Also sand some additional area around the defect. Always use a clean cloth to remove the sanding dust, oils, wax and other contaminants, especially when changing to a different sandpaper grit. Place a second layer of tape about 3 to 5 mm inside the sanded edge boundary. Cover the surrounding areas to protect them from overspray. Keep the repair area as small as possible. Use a no-rinse cleaner such as ethyl acetate or methyl ethyl ketone to clean the surface. POLYNT do not recommend using acetone to clean the surface. Always refer to the MSDS before using any chemicals. Now let's look at spot patching. The patch should be close to the size of the defect. Sand the defect using a sanding block or dual action sander and large grit sandpaper such as 220 or 320 grit. If the defect goes into the laminate, you can use a router, pencil grinder or coarser sandpaper, 50 to 80 grit to grind out the material. Keep the area around the defect round or oval with beveled edges. Use a clean cloth to remove the sanding dust, oils, wax and other contaminants, especially when changing to a different sandpaper grit. Use a no-rinse cleaner to clean the surface and always read the MSDS before using any chemicals. Step 5. Mix and measure the materials. For smaller repair areas, mix at least 50 grams to help ensure measurement accuracy. Always take gel coat from a mixed container of the gel coat's original batch. This is an example of a patch mixture. Refer to your gel coat's technical data sheet for any special recommendations. Here, we measure 3 parts gel coat into a suitable container. Your container should not be lined with paraffin or made from polystyrene. Add 1 part of the appropriate POLYNT Composites patch aid to the gel coat. Patch aid is a resin-based solution that improves the working properties of gel coat when patching. It lowers viscosity for easier spraying and reduced orange peel. It also accelerates cure and reduces surface tackiness. Thoroughly catalyse the mixture with 2% of a recommended MEKP. Step 6. Apply the catalysed gel coat mixture. For spray patching, use a precision touch-up spray gun to spray the catalysed gel coat mixture onto the damaged area. Spray 200 to 300 microns over the area. If you are spraying an area where the gel coat was completely removed, spray at least 300 microns for good hide, using more than 1 pass. If faster surface cure is desired, an overspray of patch aid may be considered for our specialty gel coats. An aerosol type sprayer may be used to spray a film coat of patch aid over the area to seal the patch and enhance the cure. This must be done while the patch is still wet, within 5 to 10 minutes of spraying the patch. Do not flood the patch aid on or spray it too thickly. For spot patching, use a knife or spatula to dab the catalysed gel coat mixture onto the damaged area. Slightly overfill the area, including the area around and above to allow for shrinkage. Puncture and eliminate any air bubbles that may be trapped in the gel coat. Remove all tape and masking material from the patching area. Keep any masking used to protect areas outside of the patch area until all sanding has been completed. Allow the patch to cure thoroughly. If time allows, let the patch cure overnight. The patch is not cured sufficiently if a thumbnail leaves an impression on the gel coat. Step 7. Finish, sand, buff and wax. If the patch remains tacky even after overnight cure, POLYNT suggests wet sanding with 320 or 400 grit sandpaper before starting the dry sanding process. This technique will prevent the gel coat from gumming up the sandpaper when dry sanding. Initially, sand with coarse grit sandpaper, followed by a succession of finer grit sandpapers. Increase the grit number from 400 to 1000 grit as needed. When sanding larger areas, sanding one direction for grit size, for example, sand north-south with 400 grit and then east-west with 600 grit sandpaper. Always use a clean cloth to remove sanding dust, oils, wax and other contaminants, especially when changing to a different sandpaper grit. The final sandpaper grit should make the patch flash to the part and remove scratches from the previous grit of sandpaper. A finer grit such as 1200 may also be used if desired and may reduce buffing time. Some buffing systems can reportedly remove 600 grit sanding scratches. If the patch shrinks so that the surface is not level with the adjoining areas, repeat the preparation and application steps. Buff using a clean 100% wool pad with medium grit rubbing compound and finishing materials to smooth the surface. Use a clean wool pad and finish glaze compound for the final buffing to remove swirl marks. Thoroughly wipe the area to remove all trace of the finishing glaze and residue. Wash the area with soap and water before waxing. Wax with a UV stabilised exterior protective paste wax. If the patch colour does not match the part colour, verify that the same batch of gel coat was used. It may be necessary to spray patch over the spot patch. Sometimes it is necessary to patch an entire section at one time using edges or corners as boundaries for hard to match situations. During and after the patching process, make sure that you clean any equipment used. Also make sure to store and dispose of materials and supplies properly. Always read the MSDS before using any chemicals. Now let's review the steps for patching gel coat. Step 1. Determine the cause of the defect and determine the type and extent of the repair needed. Step 2. Evaluate the environment and adjust as necessary. Step 3. Gather the materials and set up the equipment. Step 4. Prepare the defective area. Step 5. Mix and measure the materials. Step 6. Apply the catalysed mixture. Step 7. Finish, sand, buff and wax. If you would like more information about repairing gel coat, our patching section in the application guide includes these procedures: putty patching, gel coat and lamination patching, helpful hints and troubleshooting. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video on how to repair gel coat. Additional videos can be found by visiting our website polynt.com.